My brother sent me a text at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. No greeting, no lead-up, just, "Don't come to Dad's promotion dinner. He said it would be awkward with you there." I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and finished washing the dishes. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just stood there with my hands in the soapy water, thinking about the fact that I had spent the last 6 weeks planning that dinner. I had made the reservation. I had coordinated with my aunt about who was bringing what. I had called the restaurant twice to confirm the private dining room, the one that fit 14 people and had the view of the river, the one that cost a $200 deposit that came directly out of my checking account. I hadn't even told my dad I paid it. I just did it because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. Was I family, or was I just useful? I've been asking myself that question for a long time. I just didn't have language for it until that night. Let me back up. My dad spent 31 years working at the same engineering firm. Started as a junior draftsman, worked his way up, and this past spring he was named director of operations. It's a big deal for him. For our whole family, honestly. My grandmother used to worry about him when he was young. He dropped out of college twice, had a rough stretch in his late 20s, and watching him get to this point has been genuinely moving. I'm proud of him. I was proud of him. The dinner was his idea, loosely. He mentioned at Easter that he wanted to celebrate with the family sometime in the fall. Nothing formal, just everyone together. My mom latched onto it immediately and started talking about restaurants, and somewhere between Easter and May, it became a thing. A sit-down dinner, private room, the works. I offered to coordinate because nobody else was going to. My brother lives 40 minutes away and works long hours, and while he's not a bad person, he's also never once in his life planned a family event. My mom gets overwhelmed by logistics. My aunt means well, but calls me 4 times with questions for every one thing she actually does. So I took it on. I found the restaurant, I handled the deposit, I made the group chat, I followed up when people didn't respond. 6 weeks of back and forth. 6 weeks of, can we change the date? Is there a vegetarian option? What should we wear? Can I bring my boyfriend? I did all of it without complaining. I actually didn't mind that much. I like organizing things. I like when a plan comes together. What I didn't like was my brother's girlfriend. She came into the picture about 8 months ago. I'll call her what she is. Someone who decided early on that she didn't like me, and made it her quiet project to make sure the rest of my family figured out a way to agree with her. I don't know what I did to her. Genuinely. The first time we met, at a birthday dinner for my brother, I thought it went fine. I was friendly. I asked her questions about her job, her family, where she grew up. She was polite but cool, and I figured she was just shy or reserved. I didn't think much of it. Over the next few months, I started noticing things, small things. She'd make a comment about something I said and then laugh like it was a joke. She'd go quiet when I walked into a room. Once, when I was telling a story at a family dinner, I caught her and my brother exchanging a look. The kind of look that means something's already been said privately. I mentioned it to my mom once. She told me I was being sensitive, so I let it go. Or I tried to. By the time the dinner planning was fully underway, my brother's girlfriend had apparently decided she was co-hosting. She started sending me unsolicited suggestions. Different restaurant, different date. Could we do a cocktail hour first? Could we invite a few of her friends who'd become close with the family? I was polite. I acknowledged her ideas and explained the plans were already in motion. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. What I found out later, much later, is that she'd been talking to my brother about me for months, telling him I was controlling, that I took over family events to make myself the center of attention, that I had some kind of issue with her specifically, that I was cold to her and made her feel unwelcome. None of that was true. But my brother believed her because he loves her and because it's easier to believe someone you see every day than to push back on a story they've been building for months. I didn't know any of this when I got the text. I just knew I was standing in my kitchen at midnight reading the words, "Dad said it would be awkward with you there," and trying to understand what I had done wrong. I texted back, "Did Dad actually say that, or is this coming from somewhere else?" My brother replied, "He said it, I'm just the messenger." "Sorry." He added a sorry. That part almost made it worse, actually. Like he knew it was wrong and did it anyway. I typed and deleted 4 different responses. Then I sent, "Okay. Then I'll cancel the reservation." He didn't reply for 20 minutes. When he did, it was, "What do you mean?" "I mean, I made the reservation. I paid the deposit. If I'm not coming, I'm not keeping the reservation." Another long pause. Then, "Can you just transfer it to Mom?" I thought about that for a second. Transfer it. Like it was a utility bill. Like 6 weeks of my time and energy and $200 of my money was just a file that could be moved to someone else's folder. I said no. I called the restaurant the next morning and canceled. They refunded my deposit because I had booked far enough in advance. I was polite with them. I thanked them for accommodating us. I hung up and sat on my couch for a while before I went to work. I didn't tell anyone in my family I had canceled until my aunt called me 3 days later asking about the final head count. "There's no head count," I said. "I canceled the reservation." She went quiet. Then, "You canceled it. Why?" "Because I was uninvited. I figured there was no reason for me to keep managing a dinner I'm not attending." She made a sound I couldn't fully interpret, something between understanding and alarm. She said she'd call my mom. My mom called me an hour later. Here's what I expected: acknowledgement, maybe an apology, or at least an explanation. Maybe, "I don't know where this came from. Let me talk to your father." Here's what I got: "Why would you cancel the whole reservation? Now we have to start over. Do you know how hard it is to find a private room on short notice?" I held the phone away from my ear for a second, just to create a little distance between me and the words coming out of it. "Mom," I said, "I was told not to come by my own brother. On behalf of Dad, apparently. Your father didn't mean it like that. How did he mean it?" Silence. "Mom, how did Dad mean it would be awkward with her there, if not that he doesn't want me there?" You know how things get distorted. I didn't push it further. I knew this conversation. I'd had versions of it my whole life. The one where something that happened is slowly renegotiated until I'm the one who overreacted, the one who made things difficult, the one who took something too personally. I wasn't going to do that again. "I hope everyone has a nice time," I said. "I'll talk to you soon." I hung up before she could respond. For the next week, I was quiet. I didn't reach out. I didn't send anything to the family group chat. I went to work, I came home, I cooked dinner, I took my dog for long walks in the evenings. My dog's name is Biscuit. She's a 4-year-old beagle mix, and she has been the most consistent thing in my life for the last 4 years. I know that sounds like a small thing, but it's not. She has seen me through a breakup, a job change, moving apartments twice, and whatever this year has been. I was walking her on a Thursday evening when my brother called, not a text, an actual call. I almost didn't pick up. I did anyway. "Hey," he said, "can we talk?" "Sure." "I want to apologize for the way I handled the text thing. I shouldn't have done it that way. I waited to see if there was more. I've been talking to her a lot about family stuff, and I think I let her shape my view of things more than I should have. I'm not blaming her, it's on me. But I want you to know I don't actually think you should have been excluded." That was more than I expected. I was quiet for a moment, watching Biscuit nose at something in the grass. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I mean it. But I need you to understand that when you sent that text, I had already spent 6 weeks planning that dinner. I had paid the deposit, and not one person asked me about any of that when it all fell apart. The only question I got was why I canceled the reservation. He didn't have an answer for that. "What happened with the dinner?" I asked. "Mom's trying to rebook somewhere. It's kind of a mess," I figured. We were quiet for a second. Biscuit tugged at the leash, and I let her lead me down a side street. "Dad hasn't said anything?" I asked. "No." "Okay." That told me what I needed to know. A week later, my mom called and asked if I could look up some restaurants for her, alternative options, since the original place was now booked on the date they wanted. I let the phone ring. She texted instead, "Honey, can you just send me a couple names? You're so much better at this stuff than I am." I stared at that text for a long time. "You're so much better at this stuff than I am." I thought about all the times I'd heard some version of that sentence. You're so good at this, you always know what to do, you're the one who figures everything out, and how it only ever came up when something needed to be done. Never just as a statement of appreciation, always as a preamble to a request. I texted back, I'm sure you'll find something. Good luck. She didn't respond. A few days after that, I got a call from my aunt. Not about the dinner, about Biscuit. About 6 weeks earlier, before any of this happened, I'd asked my brother and his girlfriend if they could watch Biscuit while I was away for a work trip. 4 days. They'd watched her before and it had been fine. They said yes. The trip was already booked. The plans were already made. And even after everything with the dinner text, I don't know. I thought what happened between me and my brother was one thing, and a dog-sitting agreement was another. I thought they were separate. I was wrong about that. When I got back from my trip and went to pick up Biscuit, the girlfriend answered the door alone. She said Biscuit had been a lot, and that they'd had to make other arrangements. I stood on the doorstep and felt the ground tilt. What kind of other arrangements? She said she'd found someone to take her, a family who'd been looking for a dog. She said it like she was doing me a favor, like she'd solved a problem. I said, very carefully, you gave away my dog. She said, I found her a good home. I said, she is my dog. You gave away my dog without asking me. She started explaining something about how Biscuit was too energetic, how they hadn't slept, how she'd found this family through a coworker and it was a perfect fit, and on, and I stopped listening about 10 seconds in. I called my brother from the driveway. He picked up on the second ring. Did you know she gave Biscuit away? A pause that lasted just long enough to tell me everything. She mentioned she was struggling with it. Did you know she gave my dog to a stranger? It wasn't. She said it was a good family. My dog, I said. My property. Without my permission. I hung up. I sat in my car for probably 15 minutes. Then I called the non-emergency police line. A lot of people might not know this, but in most states, pets are considered personal property under the law. Giving away or selling someone else's pet without permission is theft. I gave the officer the address, explained the situation, and gave them Biscuit's microchip number, which was registered to me with my name, my address, my contact information. That microchip is why the whole thing got resolved as quickly as it did. The officer made some calls. By the following afternoon, I had Biscuit back. The family who'd taken her was actually perfectly nice. They were confused and a little embarrassed. They'd been told the dog was being rehomed by the owner. They didn't know they'd received stolen property. There was no drama with them. They handed her over. I thanked them for taking care of her, and that was it. With my brother's girlfriend, it did not go as smoothly. I won't go into the details of the police report or what came after. What I'll say is that I did not drop it. I pressed forward through every step of the process. My brother called me twice, and both times I let it go to voicemail. He texted me asking if we could work this out as a family. I texted back, this stopped being a family matter when she took my dog. Now it's a legal one. He didn't reply. My mom called 3 times over the next 2 weeks. Once I answered. She said, I understand you're upset, but do you really want to do this to your brother? I said, I want my dog back. I have my dog back. Now I want what happened to be on record. You're going to make this so much harder. Harder than what, Mom? Harder than being told not to come to Dad's dinner. Harder than asking me to keep planning that dinner anyway. Harder than calling me to find restaurants after I was uninvited. She said she didn't see it that way. I said, I know. I wasn't cold when I said it. I wasn't angry either, not anymore. I was just tired of performing emotions for people who had already decided how they wanted to interpret them. Tired of defending myself in a court where the verdict was always the same. My dad called once. First time he'd reached out through any of this. He didn't mention the dinner. He didn't mention the text. He said he'd heard things had gotten complicated and he hoped we could all move forward. I hope that too, I said. How was the dinner? A pause. We ended up doing something smaller, he said. Just immediate family. Immediate family. I didn't ask which definition of that phrase he was using. After I hung up, I sat on the kitchen floor with Biscuit in my lap. She was completely unbothered, the way dogs are. She'd had a strange week, been in a strange house, come home with me, and now she was just warm and heavy and present. Dogs don't require you to justify yourself. They don't reframe things until you're the problem. They just sit in your lap and breathe. I stayed on that floor for a while. I stopped paying for things after that. Not dramatically. I didn't make an announcement or send a message to the group chat. I just quietly withdrew. The streaming subscription I'd been splitting with my parents, I removed them from the plan. The grocery runs I used to do before family gatherings, where I'd pick up extras because I knew nobody else would think to, I stopped. The birthday cards I'd sent on behalf of the whole family because my mom kept forgetting, I sent one card for my own name and left it at that. The group chat went quiet for me. I didn't mute it. I just stopped responding to things that weren't directly addressed to me and stopped initiating. Nobody seemed to notice for a while, which is its own kind of information. Thanksgiving came and I didn't go. I made a reservation at a restaurant downtown, a nice one, the kind I never let myself go to without a reason. And I ate dinner by myself with a book and a glass of wine and biscuit waiting at home. I tipped well. I walked home through the cold feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, which was unobligated, like I hadn't left anything undone. Like I hadn't let anyone down because I'd stopped making promises I'd have to keep alone. Christmas, I went. Briefly. I showed up, I was pleasant, I brought a gift for my grandmother because I genuinely love my grandmother. My dad and I talked for a few minutes about his job and I was glad for him, still. That part was real. My brother and I were polite. His girlfriend wasn't there. Nobody addressed what had happened directly, which didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was my grandmother pulling me aside before I left. She held both my hands in hers and said, "I see you. I want you to know that." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. She said, "You're a good person. Don't let anyone talk you out of that." I hugged her for a long time. I still think about that moment. What it meant that she said it unprompted. What she'd seen or heard. What she understood about the shape of things that nobody had named out loud. Grandmothers know things. They've watched families long enough to see the patterns, even when everyone else is still inside them. The legal matter eventually reached a resolution I was satisfied with. I don't need to go into specifics. What I'll say is that I didn't settle for a side than I'd asked for, and I didn't apologize for pursuing it, and in the end, I didn't need to. Biscuit is fine. She's back to her routine. Morning walks, evening walks, sleeping at the foot of my bed, losing her mind over squirrels. She has no idea any of this happened. I'm glad for her. I'm different than I was before all of this. Not dramatically. I'm not a harder person, I don't think. I'm just more honest with myself about where my energy actually belongs. There's a difference between being a generous person and being a person who funds her own exclusion. I know that now in a way I didn't before. My mom texted me last month, asking if I could help plan a family trip for the summer. Something low-key, she said, just to get everyone together. I read the message twice. I recognize the pull of it, the familiar reflex that says yes, that says of course, that starts mentally organizing timelines and group chats before I've even replied. I let it sit for a day, then I wrote back, "I'm not going to be able to take the lead on that, but I hope you have a great time." She said, "Okay." I don't know if she was hurt. I don't know what she told my dad or my brother or anyone else. I've stopped trying to manage how the story gets told when I'm not in the room. That's been the biggest change, actually. Not the boundaries or the legal proceedings or the things I stopped paying for. It's that, letting the story go. I took Biscuit out for a long walk that evening. It was warm for early spring, that kind of evening where the light lingers past 7 and the air smells like somebody's cut grass. She was happy. I was happy, in the uncomplicated way that comes from wanting exactly what you have. I've stopped bracing for the next text.